Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the open house session of our conference. We now invite questions, queries that you may have, and we encourage you to participate in the discussion for collaborative learning. We are devoting this session actually to discussing, sharing our quality practices for our best practices for quality assurance. So we encourage each one of you to come up with suggestions and share your practices with us. And we have experts here from our panel, Dr. Aarti Khosla and Professor Swati Pal, to share their own experiences. Professor Soni has joined us online. Those of you who are in the online mode, you may please raise your hands or post your questions on the chat.
For both online as well as on-site participants, I wanted to introduce you to one person. This is Mr. Raman here. And Mr. Raman has been of great help to us in terms of actually facilitating the process of, helping us to understand documents, because you do need somebody to hold your hand. So he has been greatly instrumental in guiding our internal auditors for this purpose. So I just thought I will introduce him to everyone. Yeah, why don't you read out the question?
Yeah. So this open session is for a discussion on the best practices that are already being implemented by different institutions. What are you doing towards quality assurance, towards excellence in processes? If you would like to share your practices, you're most welcome. The other objective is to take up your queries in case you have any questions. There are one or two questions that we have already received. Let me begin with that. And in the meanwhile, I request all the audience to think of the pointers that they would like to share. Professor Soni, you're there? You need to unmute, Professor Soni. There is a question which probably people want you to answer. Okay, okay. So there is a question for you. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Okay, okay. So there are in fact 3-4 questions. I'm going to club all of them and ask you a single question.
Okay.
So it says that NAC accreditation becomes much easier with an effective implementation of ISO 21001. So the institutions that have worked on ISO 21001 for 2 to 3 years or maybe 4 years, for them the NAC journey becomes much easier. But should the institution do something different for NAC if they have implemented ISO 21001 in the most effective manner, complying with all the requirements and also achieved excellence? Does NAC require any additional documentation or preparation? That is the first part of this question. Would you like to first answer this?
Okay. I think NAC asks for certain parameters which are envisaged in its criteria 1 to 7, and it basically covers 360-degree view of all the operations related to an institution. And ISO provides a very structured backbone to everything what is happening in educational institution. ISO 21000 I'm especially talking about. So people have been working on for NAC, or they had the processes and systems already evolving organically, or through some systems they might have implemented, or and most of the time it is the leader led, like the person, either the head of the institution or head of the department, comes with or his or her own experience and basically implements these systems and processes. I mean, that's a good way of starting, but that takes a kind of person or person specific approach, the leader driven methodology. Whereas ISO provides a very informal, structured, and uh, is a very organized 360-degree structure which is aligned with international standards, and that helps any organization to be competitive or be at par with any international institution. So there it helps a lot if somebody has gone through ISO certification and had tried to implement all the clauses into a spirit. So that's our understanding, implementing ISO, understanding ISO, and going for NAC. That's our learning.
May I add to this, please? With your permission, Professor Soni. This is
Sure.
Antipati part.
You're
Yeah.
most welcome.
So I just wanted to add to this as somebody, as an institution which has obviously implemented both. We are part of the NAC accreditation system, and we also have the ISO certification. So I want to give an example. I was speaking informally to some people, and I did mention the fact that one of the things that NAC, for example, asks teachers are things like lesson plans, are things like rubrics. The NAC specifically mentions rubrics for evaluation. Now, the peer team may or may not check it. It all depends upon your luck. But playing with luck is never a good idea. When you do the ISO ensures that you have your lesson plans. It ensures that you have your rubric in place so that since we have an internal and external audit every year, because the the ISO certification is for a period of 3 years. So if you have that kind of an audit being done every year, at the time of your NAC peer team visit, you don't even have to do a rehearsal, because you know that all your lesson plans are in place. You know that all your rubrics are in place. So there is never any fear or tension that something is getting left out. The ISO ensures that nothing gets left out. Now, when RTG was speaking, she said something which, was quite, it was fun, but it was very meaningful, because she talked about from the doorman to the chairman, from the chairman to the doorman, however you wish to. So the ISO is actually a collective enterprise which looks at every domain. So it will look at your canteen workers and find out whether you are actually following a process of hygiene control for them. It will look at your first aid room and see whether all the equipment, you may think you are perfectly well equipped. So it will look at your equipment. It will look at the way you use your colleges which have got science, for example, would have a very different, we don't have science in our college. But those colleges which have science, they will realize that even equipment assessment is so very important. Now we have computer laboratories, and in our first ISO, in the first audit, certain things were pointed out to us, which it is automatic. You will automatically then take it on. So by the time you come to NAC, you are prepared. You are confident. The ISO gives you that leverage of confidence. I just wanted to say that it is work. I'm not going to say that there is no work involved in ISO. That would be a lie. It is work, but it is work that is compliant with NAC. It is work that will help you for your NAC. You will not have to do a rehearsal. That is all I wanted to reiterate.
Actually, NAC and ISO both are complementary, rather, I would say competing in any space, or it's like reworking. It's basically two very beautiful frameworks complementing each other. One provides the list of matrices and KPIs to measure the performance, whereas the ISO provides a very structured goal on which you can stand your organizational process and systems.
The ISO tells you how to do it. The NAC simply tells you ये करना है, ये लाना है, ये आपको इस हिसाब से ग्रेड मिलेगा. लेकिन NAC
True.
सच मायने में बताता नहीं कि आपको वो लाना कैसे है. ISO
True,
tells
true.
you आपको ऐसे लाना है. You may agree, you may disagree, you may have your own unique characteristics. There are disagreements with the ISO auditors, but at least it shows you the way to attain those. That is very important.
Yeah, yeah, very true. And disagreement also happens when we don't really interpret ISO in its spirit, actually. We try to defend our position sometime. Otherwise, there is hardly any scope of conflict because it's a guiding principle, and if you take the spirit right, it guides you to the right spot. So
Before you ask, I would just like to add to what Professor Swati said. So when she said ISO actually tells you what all you have to do, that simply means that ISO 21001 standard comes with a lot of guidance also. There are 7 annexures. If you all can flip through the pages of the ISO standard, those 7 annexures give you enough guidance on how you can effectively implement each requirement of the ISO standard. So the institution who has actually read that standard well, understood it, and has actually implemented in letter and spirit derives lot of benefits.
Yeah, I just
Yes,
wanted to
yes.
ask the requirement list for ISO and for the NAC, is it same? This is like what the person was asking.
Okay. You would like to say something, Professor Soni? So the question here is the list of requirements in the ISO framework and the list of requirements in the NAC framework, are they same?
philosophically, they are asking for the same thing. One is asking the quality and the stakeholder experience of two metrics. Another is guiding, is providing a principal structure of guidance. So they are basically aiming for the same thing. I mean, you can add more from ISO structure point of view.
Can I add to that? Because I think the question was a very pointed one. And I can understand where colleges are coming from. You're talking about documentation, right? So I will tell you that whatever documents you are using for NAC are 100% part of ISO, but ISO goes an extra length. I gave you the example of the canteen. So NAC is not going to be, NAC is going to ask, हाँ आप quality maintain करते हो कि नहीं. NAC peer team जब आती है आपके college में, वो शायद देखेंगी कि अच्छा क्या उनकी सर्टिफिकेशन है कि नहीं. But if you look at the criteria and you look at the marking in the criteria, no, it is not marked. But the ISO does that. The ISO says, no, I want to see the weekly medical report of your canteen workers. So I'll tell you, there are two things. Some things can't be measured. One is a personal satisfaction that an institution has, that look, your canteen workers are hygienically, 100% there. And so you don't have to worry about hygiene and quality. That can't be measured either by NAC or by ISO. But the more important thing is that when the NAC peer team comes, now we often nowadays neglect the NAC peer team visit. And I will advise all colleges going in for a NAC peer team visit, don't neglect it. The NAC peer team has to be impressed by your general, exuberance and vitality and desire for quality. Because it depending upon how impressed they are, that is how they will mark you for those remaining 25% of marks which are vital. They could well be the dividing line between an A and an A plus, or an A plus and an A plus plus, and so on. So they are going to be impressed if you can show them. If you have an ISO, everything will be in place. And if you can show them that, look, I have this, they are going to be impressed by you. I want to share something. You will forgive me if it sounds pompous and I'm boasting. But our NAC peer team chairperson in the second cycle said, she said, I looked and looked and looked in JDMC for some faults to find, and I couldn't find it. Why? Because we had got everything in place. That for us was the biggest compliment. So she made some suggestions where she felt we could do a little more. That is what the ISO will do. It will make you 100% quality control. Sorry, I'm not trying to promote ISO. I'm just telling you very frankly what we have experienced.
Also, I would like to add, when the ISO 21001 auditors come to your institution to conduct an audit, they are the ones who have already undergone a very rigorous training process. It's a full 5 days training that the lead auditors have to undergo. They have to write an exam. They have to pass that exam to become an auditor. And then they are not immediately asked to go and audit an institution. They have to initially work as an observer. They would silently be a part of the audit team and observe the seniors conducting an audit. Gradually, after a couple of audits they've done as an observer, they become an auditor. And then again, gradually after a few audits, they are moved to the lead auditor category. So it's a process in which the individuals learn a lot. I am not sure about the kind of, the trainings that are done for the NAC assessors. But yes, because ISO 21001 is a very new standard. It is relatively a very exhaustive standard also. It covers almost everything, right from your teaching, learning to assessments, to inclusivity, to leadership, to process approach, to risk-based thinking, to opportunities for improvement, change management, learning from your organizational mistakes that you've made, your curriculum design development, your infrastructure, your human resources, their training, their competence, the competency framework of your teaching as well as the non-teaching staff. So it does not leave any area. When we go for an audit to any institution, the kind of questions that we ask, it encompasses the entire system. We have to look at the system in its entirety and see whether the process interaction is available or not. Say, for example, output of the teaching learning department directly impacts the input of the examination, right? Similarly, output of the HR department directly impacts the input of the teaching learning department or the workload. So how the entire organization is intertwined into a process interaction matrix is what you need to understand. So ISO kind of forces you to look at your system not in silos, but the entire system as a whole. If one thing fails, the entire system would fail. So the management and the faculty and everybody in the core team, they are all working together to ensure that there is excellence achieved at each level. Yeah. Now, NAC also wants you to do the same. NAC gives you the guidelines as to what all you need to do. Maybe those 100 things that you need to show during the assessments. ISO is not a checklist-based kind of a framework. It's a very wide framework, and it makes you to think. You can think beyond. The example that Professor Swati gave was when an ISO 21001 auditor goes to your canteen, he will not look at the overall look and feel of the canteen. He might ask for the weekly hygiene report. He might ask for the students' feedback when they are eating food there. He might ask for the number of incidents or accidents that have been reported because of food not being good, or in case something has ever gone wrong, what have you learned from those incidents? How do you plan to improve your canteen? What are your objectives for the canteen? So you see, the overall mindset would change, the way you're looking at it. There is no checklist that you need to comply with. You start, if I'm the process owner, I will start looking at my canteen from a very different perspective now.
Aarti, if I may just deviate from that a little bit. Now, while you say that there is no checklist, actually, it's not, I will word it differently. There is a checklist. The checklist is partially compliant directly with what the NAC wants and partially indirectly with what the NAC wants. That is what I'm trying to say. So, whatever evidences you give to the NAC, you would also need to give those same evidences to ISO. So, there it is equal. But there are some additional things that the ISO asks for. NAC doesn't ask for them directly, but it does have an indirect bearing upon your total NAC score.
Yes, please.
May I add a bit to what just been discussed?
Sure, please.
Actually, it was a because we were going through NAC readiness and we organized 4 mocks in between and we invited people. And traditionally, those evaluators who come from different colleges and universities, they are generally not exposed to ISO processes and systems for the traditional reasons. So, but and they see the documentation prepared in response to NAC requirement, and documents are prepared as per the traditional understanding of the document, like lesson plan, as you said, or the academic calendar, or anything. So there is a way of documenting it. But when they say documents prepared from the philosophy of ISO, the kind of completeness in the document, kind of version controlling, the kind of formatting itself, the uniformity across departments and sections, just the look and feel and completeness of the ISO-led document puts a delight to what is already, I mean, has been or being done for a long time. But the way ISO guides the documentation is again a delight to see, because it really comes to a different level of quality just for the completeness, look and feel, and the usability of the document, especially the version controlling, because in our institution, we see that there are 5 copies of the same data with different people. And when we ask for the final mark sheet or final grade sheet, there are, I mean, multiple copies nowadays because now it is easy with the computer and Excel to keep separate copies. And 5 professors have done different 5 versions of the same thing. And ISO solves this problem to a large extent, I mean, completely, because there is a robust version control. And you can be sure that if you are getting one data, it is going to be authentic and final. So there is a lack of confusion, I mean, improvement of efficiency, the confidence, and one data source philosophy is implemented in true sense. So that's the added advantage of going for ISO. Whatever accreditation, we have been going to other accreditations also, international accreditation, ACSP is also. Everybody honors and loves the way ISO guides the documentation.
I just
So,
want to say something very lightly. मतलब जब नैक हमने पहले शुरू किया कॉलेज में, तो बहुत सारे लोग सर कहते थे कि अरे डेटा कैन बी मैनिपुलेटेड, क्रिएट कर सकते हैं डेटा। बहुत फ्रैंकली मैं बता रही हूँ, सॉरी मैं बड़ी मुंहफट हूँ, पर मैं आपको बता रही हूँ कि ये एक्यूजेशन अक्सर आया है नैक को लेके कि डेटा क्रिएट किया गया है। आईएसओ में आप डेटा क्रिएट नहीं कर सकते हैं। आप जो कह रहे हैं आपको वो करना ही है। You have to, it has to be done. And also because you're being audited every year, you know, I mean, you get a certification for 3 years, but the audit happens every year. You have it at 2 levels. You have the internal audit also and the external audit also every year. And every time the auditors come, the external auditor comes, let me tell you, they will always find new things to tell you because that's their job. कि यहाँ पे ये incomplete है. Yeah.
just one more thing, like it's very incidentally coming to our mind, because we have been, I mean, I didn't know how rigorous we have been in our process. And I suggested that anybody who wants to go for NAC, they should first go for ISO, because in NAC you have to have 3 years and 5 years data. And generally colleges, traditionally, especially private colleges, don't keep the data in proper format. And that is what leads to tearing the data at the end of the day. And if they go to ISO and if they implement ISO before going for NAC, they will at least have annual audits, and their data will be checked every year. And by the time they finish their final audit and go for the second round of ISO certification, they will have at least 4 years of data intact. And it will be nicely done, properly audited, guided, and complete in all sense. So the need of that picking up the data at the last moment would not arise. But of course, this is a very stringent expectation from any college that first you go for ISO, then you go for NAC. But this is philosophically we felt that this would certainly help a lot.
Professor Soni, I think you very rightly said that, and you've also kind of appreciated how much of grilling our auditors do for you. So many questions they ask you, they don't leave anything. I would just like to share with you all a very recent incident that we had. One of the vice chancellors of a university that we've audited, they've got about 17 departments. The vice chancellor said, I asked all the departments, now since we are going in for ISO journey, bring me a master list of the entire documentation that you have at your level, every department. How many policies, how many procedures, how many SOPs, guidelines, and what kind of formats are you maintaining so that I know. And he said, I was so surprised to see, I've noted down that number looking at the message that I got from him on WhatsApp. He said 9,657 documents they had. And then he said, the next task I gave to all of them, please sit together and see how much of them we don't need. Okay. And how much, what all documentation have got lot of repetition. So when they did this job, this took them about 6 months to work on this entire exercise. And now in today's date, they have 560 documentation for the entire university.
Great.
560 documents. They have a master list in place. I think that's the whole beauty of this exercise. Yeah, you wanted to add.
I just wanted to say that when we look at NAC, I think something that's mandated by the university. So we look at it in terms of different criterias. And when we are looking at ISO, I think what Professor Soni pointed out, the annual audit, that is what I wanted to talk about. We're talking about strict quality control. So our processes, and ISO is process based. So we will have to have a process in place. Something happens. What is the root cause analysis of this? What is the feedback? How have you actually, what have you done with the feedback? What is your action taken report, and so on and so forth. So it is going to be entirely process based. Yes, you will have to, there'll be some documents that will be, common to both, but some that might not be common to both. So they will need to be, in fact, a good thing, which is what we've done in our colleges, that we try to map them so that, certain things that we were doing as part of NAC, if we were to include the ISO component, then our annual work, in a sense, becomes smoother. But putting it in one sentence, I would just say that where NAC has given us certain rubrics in the form of different criterias, I think ISO demands a kind of annual quality control, and that helps us.
Why I say that I completely endorse what you said, Pal, and very succinctly put by you. And she's the IQAC coordinator right now, so she's handling most things. And let me tell you, IQAC coordinators are a big headache for the principals because they keep pointing out कि ये भी करना है, वो भी करना है, ये कम है, वहाँ पे कम है. So we have a dialogic relationship. But I first had it with Shilpa, and now I have it with Payal. But the fact is that again I'm saying, please, it may sound very light, कि जिन चीजों को हम castigate करते थे NAC को, कि भी NAC is, what is it really doing? Is it really managing quality? They're just asking us for data. It's so much of quantification. It's all about quantification. ISO is not about quantification. It is I'm again using the word I used in the morning. It is genuine. It is genuinely asking you to see कि भी कहाँ गलत जा रहे हो. अगर आपके बच्चे खुश नहीं है, results अच्छे नहीं हो रहे हैं, आपके teacher. By the way, the ISO is very dangerous for principals. I can tell you this because the ISO is one big grievance process. It addresses all grievances. So as far as the principal is concerned, the ISO brings forward all the grievances of the college to the administration. So it is a very good mechanism for grievance redressal. This wanted to add. Yeah, sorry.
I would like to compliment the GDMC team for such a wonderful talk, and we have a lot of learning. I just want to know how much financial burden if we implement this, the college would be. And second, I would like to ask from Professor Pal, what makes you, because you're the first college to implement this ISO, what makes you to go for this ISO implementation?
No, no, I just want to say, before any college embarks upon an ISO, it is important, of course, to first locate a very genuine certifying agency. You can get an ISO certification for as cheap as 500 rupees, as Mr. Johari told us. That is not an authentic ISO certification. You will not be implementing the process of certification at all. So first and foremost, my word of caution is don't go in for that. ISO certification as a process becomes expensive not for the certification, but because it involves training of internal auditors. And a good certifying agency, COAE, as in my understanding, is the only certifying agency in the world for the educational sector. So actually, we have the best with us. That is why Mr. Jory said you don't have to worry about anything at all. They are the only certifying agency for the education sector. Education sector. I know what I'm saying. All right. In fact, I have conveyed this to principals of Delhi University colleges also. So there are costs involved for the training of auditors. On the 2 days that the external auditors come to the college, there are costs for that as well. So it is not, I'm not going to say it's a very cheap exercise. No, it is not. It involves money. So the governing body of a college would have to first pass its own approval for the costing involved. What the costing is, if she would like to share, then she can, RTG. But I want to also, your second question was, what made you go in for an ISO? Okay, so I'll tell you, I've already said it. I was a little skeptical about NAC. I was very, you would have heard, if you listened to me when I was speaking, I was very forthright. It was experiential. When we got our NAC score, I'm not going to say that I was disturbed by the NAC score because it was a decent NAC score. But I was disturbed by the fact that there was so, in public perception, there were some colleges across the country. I'm not talking about Delhi University, across the country, which, in my opinion, didn't have half the things we had. And most importantly, didn't have the fabulous faculty, committed faculty that I had, the very expert faculty that I had, the very good non teaching staff that I had, and the very eager students I have. So that was a great, it bothered me. So we started working towards getting a good NAC score. But again, it bothered me. Is that all I'm working towards? Am I working only towards the score? The score is important because people are going to be attracted to my college because of my score also. So they say. So they say. I don't know. But so they say. So, of course, it was important. The management also would like you to have a good NAC score. So, there were all kinds of reasons to get a good NAC score. But deep inside, I was not happy as an educator. I'm primarily a teacher. You see, educational administrators, we become administrators by chance. There's no cadre. We don't have a cadre of principals where we come from. Basically, I'm a teacher at heart. So, as a teacher, I kept feeling, am I doing the right thing? Am I really looking? If you look at NAC also, like for example, NAC talks about rubrics of evaluation. It talks about it in a descriptive way. We ignore it. ISO will pick that up. It will say, नहीं आपके rubrics of evaluation क्या हैं? जब वो ये ऐसा करते हैं ना, rubrics of evaluation will differ from teacher to teacher. But does a teacher know her rubrics? Really, does a teacher know? So I may be teaching English literature, I may be teaching a particular paper, I may have a certain way of assessing my students, but do I know that way of assessment? If I know that way of assessment, even if I'm in a bad mood on a particular day or I don't like a student's handwriting, I will still keep those rubrics in my mind and check that paper. So there I felt that the ISO was, for me, if I had my way, I would, keep just ISO. Shouldn't be saying this, but I really mean it.
Thank you. Thank you. You pointed out very. And regarding being the only education sector specific certification body, as Badal mentioned, there are a lot of ISO certification bodies, many in the country. In fact, many of them are accredited by NCB also. But at COAE, it was our choice to remain an education sector specific because this is one area where we thought a lot of specialization is needed, a lot of expertise is needed. So this is how it began. Now, coming back to your previous question related to costing, there is no fixed X cost for getting an ISO certificate. If somebody says you get an ISO certificate at whatever cost, that's absolutely wrong because costing varies from institution to institution. It depends on multiple factors like your strengths, your existing systems, the maturity of your existing systems, how many students you have, how many teachers you have, what kind of area are you operating in, what kind of risks you have, are your processes really complex or very simple? Based on a lot of factors that we gather from an institution, we would calculate the amount of effort that is needed for auditing you. Based on that, the cost is given. Now, since COA is an education sector specific body, our objective is not to run a certification business. Yeah. So the cost, whatever it is very much affordable. Yeah.
That is true because, colleges like ours, we don't get any great funding, and our fees are also very modest fees. So whatever we do is primarily through the fees that we get from the college. So we can't go in for something which is over the top. That much I can tell you. Okay.
So there's a one question for I think Dr. Khosla, Ati Khosla ji. Before 21001, what was the situation of ISO in educational institution? Yes.
So before ISO 21001, there was no education sector specific international standard available in the whole world. This is the first ever management system standard for the education sector. So the educational institutions were implementing various other standards, including the generic ISO 9001, which is quality management system. And they used to interpret that standard in their own capacity. Yeah, because the standard did not use the sector specific terminology. There a word customer is used, whereas in the education sector, there is no customer. Yeah, it's the recipient of your service. It's the learner or the other stakeholders. So there was a lot of issue regarding understanding of the ISO 9001 in the education sector, because of which the institutions were not able to get the best results unless they were guided by very, the consultants with a lot of experience in the education sector, or they were shown the right direction by the auditors who have the expertise of auditing the education sector. So now, since there is a standard, so I think the situation is very much improved now. Yeah, Mr. Vinay Kumar says that.
I want to, yeah, must address this. So Vinay Kumar Srivastav says that no, the ISO is not at all a grievance redressal, and at least not at any rate in his institution, as I can see. Well, then all I can say is that your institution needs to relook at how it is doing its ISO implementation. There is no way that if you are implementing the ISO correctly, if you're implementing the process correctly, there is no way that you can ignore grievances, because the ISO will enter into every domain, from your hostel to your computer lab, to your canteen, to your teachers, to your students, to your lesson plans, to your, they will have feedback for each and everything. They will want to know not just the action taken report, which is what the NAC asks for. You see, the NAC stops with action taken report as a document. They want to know, have you analyzed your action taken report? And if you've analyzed your action taken report, what was the outcome of the action that you took? So I'm sorry if you don't seem to see it as grievance redressal. At Janki Devi Memorial College, we have seen it as one of the channels. That's Janki Devi Memorial College has a very robust grievance redressal mechanism of its own, by the way. But this also then becomes one more channel of redressing. I won't even say redressing, of actually ensuring that that grievances are taken care of.
to add to that, if you are saying that ISO is not a grievance redressal tool, well, it is the administration which is redressing the grievances. ISO is enabling the administration to get the right kind of grievances and to address them.
So as I just said, the Vice Chancellor said now we have 560 documents. Similarly, the management gets to see the entire status of things and they know how to address what. In those terms, Professor Swati meant it's a grievance redressal tool. Okay, do we have any more questions?
So there's another question. I don't know who it is actually addressed to. So is there any plan of enhancing teaching process methodology, including monitoring and measuring feedback, feed forward, etc. in NAC?
Professor Soni, would you like to take up this question? In NAC,
Uh,
are you working on?
yeah, can you repeat the question?
Sir, question is there any plan of enhancing teaching process methodology, including monitoring and measuring feedback, feed forward, etc. in NAC?
Actually, NEC already implements the mechanism to improve the stakeholder experience, whereas one of the stakeholder is student and alumni, for whom basically the whole organization is designed for. And there has to be a process of meeting the stakeholders' requirements, and that leads to the design of curriculum, revision of the curriculum, I mean, aligning it to the industry requirement or the professional requirement of the stakeholder, in this case, which is the student, as well as alumni, because yeah, they have to succeed in the career. So very well, right in the current framework itself, there is a mechanism of, I mean, correcting the teaching, learning, and evaluation process. Because when we take the evaluation process, there could be multimodal process of evaluation. Especially in liberal education, there could be fieldwork, there could be assignment, there could be interactive sessions, apart from the conventional midterm and end-term examinations. So the choice of evaluation system, the way it is implemented, the weightage it is given, it all depends on one formal direction, that how to achieve the stakeholder goals. So there is a process of like correcting the process and systems which are like teaching, learning, and evaluation in the current framework itself. I think
Sir, I want to add to
I'm
what you
able to.
said. I want to
Yeah.
add to what you said, sir, and to the gentleman or the lady, whoever has asked this question. The thing is that there is a tendency, हम सब में ये एक tendency है कि हम NAC को एक in isolation देखते हैं. The day we
Yeah.
stop doing that, the day we see that NAC is just one more. See, what is if you look at the 7 criteria of NAC, what is it that we didn't already know? Didn't we know that we had to publish? Didn't we know that we had to do research work? Didn't we know that we had to satisfy the needs of our students and make them enhance their skills and make them employable? Didn't we know that we had to give a forum to our students to, inculcate social values in them and do extension activities and outreach activities? We knew all of this. But the tendency of most of us, because suddenly we have adopted the system, it's a system. So, we tend to look at it as an outsider, as an intruder, as an interloper. The day we stop doing that, the day we kind of tell ourselves that, okay, we are going to allow NAC to be like a reviewing body for ourselves, individually and collectively as an institution, I think that day, this whole thing of these kind of questions that are being asked, does the NAC give you a process for effective pedagogy? The NAC is saying you are expected to be an effective pedagogue. The NEP is telling us use ICT. Why aren't you using ICT? Why aren't you exploring avenues through ICT to use pedagogy, to be an effective pedagogue? Why aren't you doing that? So the point is, actually everything is available to us. Are we using the things available to us effectively or not is something we need to ask us. Knack is, in a certain sense, we keep, saying all kinds of terrible things, but the knack actually is giving us a certain, I would say, platform, a certain self-esteem. Knack is actually honoring you and respecting you and saying, look, we know that you're a good pedagogue. But now tell us because one of the questions in the knack criteria for teaching learning is this: what are the kinds of pedagogy that you use? And when I've gone as a knack peer team member, it is sometimes a little annoying, I'll be very honest with you, to hear the same thing. Oh, I use audio visual. Everybody uses audio visual nowadays. What is the innovative thing that you are doing with the audio visual? So colleges now are in a big hurry to put up smart boards. How are the teachers actually using those smart boards? That is the question that needs to be asked. So everything is in place. We need to ask ourselves, are we using those things? This question about the knack is telling you, you know everything. Tell us how you are doing it.
We're going to take one last question because we have to organize our next session. So this question is for Dr. Khosla. One of the participants wants to know, why is a sample adequate for ISO audit? Dr. Khosla, this question is for you.
So what is the adequate sample in ISO audits? Now, when the ISO auditors visit the institution, they would look at documents, they would look at records, they look at format. They will ask you a lot of questions. They would observe your processes as they are happening. So we even visit your classrooms and see how teachers are teaching in the class, how examination is happening, how sports classes are being conducted, how library operations are handled, and all of that. Now, how much do we look into? There is no fixed formula. Okay. There is no fixed formula for sampling. The activities that the ISO auditors would look at, the size would depend on various factors like your organization size, the complexity, the risk factors, and the scope of the audit above all. How much are we going to cover? Are we looking at only your undergraduate courses, or are we also looking at your postgraduate courses, doctoral degree programs, certificate programs? So what all are the areas that we are going to look into? Within those areas, within those boundaries, our questioning happens. There is no fixed number or percentage defined by ISO standards for what constitutes an adequate sample size. Instead, auditors typically use their professional judgment, their experience, and risk-based approach to determine the appropriate sample size. They would look at factors like significance of the process. For example, I'm looking at your canteen, I'm not expected to spend 2 hours there. I might finish it off in half an hour. Whereas when I'm going for classroom observation, I might spend 4 hours in classroom observation. Curriculum design and development, I might spend half a day in that process. So it depends on the complexity of the processes, criticality of the processes, and significance of the processes. Also, as auditors, we gain certain level of confidence in the system of the institution. If by and large we see things are in place, people are willing to do it, there is a lot of intent to improve systems, we might overlook some small things. I have seen auditors who would raise the gaps like this particular document is not signed, so you get a non-conformity. This particular document does not have a date on it, you get a non-conformity. That's not the objective. Objective is to see how much value an auditor can add, and that can be done only through sampling. An auditor is not expected to look at everything in the institution. We pick up random samples, but samples that we choose. That is why I say again and again, auditors training is very, very crucial. Auditors cannot be expected to go to an educational institution just because he has been doing some ISO standard audits in the past. So we feel he is good to go to an educational institution also. It doesn't work.
Okay.
And we get to know that ISO is
Sounds like us.
You in your initial days. Sounds like you in your initial.
How do we go about it? Go for NTA, HIT-NAC, go for ISO, next to everything.
Professor Soni wants to answer this. You need to unmute. Professor Soni, please unmute yourself.
Professor Soni, unmute.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you say somebody said like without great teacher, there is no great student. What makes a great teacher? Actually, great students make a great teacher. Because as much as the students learn from the teachers, teachers should learn from the students because they are the one who are having innovative questions, may not have all the
Professor Soni, sorry for interrupting. Here we had another question for you from Miss Richa. She is asking that as a college, she's expected to implement NAC, she's expected to implement NBA and implement NIRF rankings, and then do ISO. So, what is the difference between all the four? Can one be skipped? Can all be kind of combined and interrelated? What
yeah,
is
actually, yeah, the better sense is prevailing because in all these multiple accreditation systems are being done away with new NEP, and I think there would be a single accreditation that is in the process. So hopefully that will happen. And but in my understanding and experience, people should understand that how a system operates. Like if we take our college or university as an organization, and there are systems and processes, and we might have evolved through our experience working in an environment, but that kind of experience gives a very lopsided understanding of the whole thing. Actually, when as we grow, we need to basically broaden our horizon. I'm not saying it's an incapability just because of the opportunity you don't get, and suddenly you are made vice chancellor or principal or HOD, and you suddenly end up doing something which you don't have much experience of. ISO gives you a very strong theoretical framework to approach to the whole problem. That is what is my understanding. So understanding ISO, whether you want to implement it in an organization in per se, but just trying to understand the standard which is designed for that particular quality framework, and especially now this 21001 gives a very robust understanding of designing an organization and running an organization. So I feel that ISO plus one of the accreditation, which is going to be just single accreditation now, I think, in the country, things should be going in this manner.
I would just quickly add one sentence to it.
Sure.
When you're preparing, please forget what are you preparing for. Okay? Go by the process approach. Look at the entire system from the process perspective. What are the outputs? What are the intended outcomes? Am I able to monitor and measure my system? Can I evaluate my process? If today I want to do an internal audit of my system, do I have enough data to look at the status of the process? If you are ready with that process approach, the outcome-based approach, no matter whether an NBS assessor comes or NAC assessor comes or ISO auditor comes or maybe an NIRF guy comes, you are ready for it.
Just adding a bit. So most of the data which is asked by all these three core agencies, whether it is NPA, NAC, NIRF, it's overlapping. So if you prepare one data, it solves all. So that is why this now the government is coming up with this idea that like to have multiple accreditation.
Professor Soni, if I will be excused for intervening and saying the opposite, not the NRF. Not the NRF. The NIRF data is actually quite different. And in fact, it put a lot of pressure on us. I don't know about other colleges, because till date, we haven't been able to really fathom it. To be very honest, we are not very, very clear as to what they want and how they want it and how they arrive at the rankings that they do. To be very honest, I haven't really understood it, because they've got something like student perception of the college. And I'm wondering, how on earth do they measure perception? Because the NRIF till date has not told us. It's all shrouded in a lot of mystery. So it has not told us how it is that they evaluate perception, for example. So NIRF is
Okay.
the one thing I will not say that overlaps with either ISO or with NAC. The NAC and the ISO, I can see similarities and points of extension in case of ISO, but NIRF is it's definitely not the same. It's a totally different ball game, which we are yet to understand the game. It's like that.
Okay, mechanism may be different because the similar thing in NAC is like student satisfaction survey. Whereas again, you don't know the mechanism, but there at least they give you the list of the questions they are going to ask to the students. But yes, an IRF, you are not like, I mean, if you say the transparency or the info, I mean, preempting of the relevant information, that part might be, I mean, different because a NAC is a very extensively designed framework, and IRF is a very small framework compared to that. So we have been analyzing all different, I mean, accreditation systems and ranking frameworks. Yes, the depth of the data or the breadth of the analysis could be the reason, but in summary, they ask for almost the same overlapping data, but the mechanism might be different and the transparency could be an issue. And IRF, it has been criticized for many reasons. Even the IM professors who IMs got very good rank, they have criticized it. And I have few friends who are very critical to an IRF because it's a one thing is actually the complete lack of transparency is the, I mean,
Not
the
just
formal.
complete lack of transparency, sir, it is also a little blinkered. For example, as an educational institution, I might want to build up on certain things. For example, I may not have capital, development. I may not be building up on, I may want to buy more books for the library on a particular day. I may want to buy more equipment but they look at things like expenditure and they look at things like expenditure on capital assets. Now, that's weird. Are you trying to say that the expenditure for capital assets has to be a certain quantum every year? That's not the right way this is my criticism against the NRF, which I'm quite vocal about. I find it very upsetting as an administrator that I do not have the flexibility if I were to take NIRF, very passionately, which, sometimes one is under the pressure to do that, So there are these issues which need to be addressed.
Yeah,
I'm afraid we'll have to close down this session because we have international participants and international speakers who are waiting to join in. We'll convene with the next session at 4 o'clock, just after 5 minutes.
I think the two of the
Thank you
speakers-
very much, Professor Soni. Thank you very much, Dr. Khosla and Professor Pal and all our participants. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you
join
all.
back.
Thank you all.
in higher education institutions. So as you heard, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Avant Assessments, which tests language proficiency in 45 languages. So naturally, I'm here to talk about assessment and the role of assessment in achieving excellence in higher education. I'm also a member of the US delegation to the ISO, which works on the 21001 standard, and we'll discuss how the 21001 standard addresses the important role of assessment in creating and maintaining an effective educational program, particularly in higher ed. So let me step back for a moment and talk a bit about assessment in general. We need to remember the fundamental reason that we give tests or assessments, and I'll generally use the two terms interchangeably. Assessment is foundational to success in education, or really in any human endeavor. Assessment can tell you where you, as an individual, are in your progress towards any goal. In this case, we're talking about learning goals. It can also tell a program how successful it is in reaching its goals and identifying the areas that
David?
it needs to do.
David, I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Have you shared your presentation? Do you want us
Oh,
to share?
sorry. I'm sorry. Yes. No, I can do that.
Okay.
Um,
No, he's sharing it. He's sharing his presentation.
can you see that?
Yes, yes, we can see that. You can make it full
All
screen.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was so focused on what I was going to say. As I was saying, it can also assessment can also tell a program how successful it is in reaching its goals and identify the areas that it needs to work on or to change in order to be more successful. Without an assessment, you just don't know where you are, and if you don't know where you are in your journey, you're certainly not going to reach your goal. So assessment of learning is essential to assure success for an individual or the quality of a program. Both NAAC and ISO 21001 have been created to assure quality, move forward on their quest for excellence. So it's no surprise that both organizations focus on the role of assessment. So one of the key elements in effective assessment is to make sure that the assessment or assessments are connected to the learning outcomes that the program wants to achieve or the individual wants to achieve. The NAAC focuses on the importance of both self and external quality evaluations, which I read as assessments, in order to be successful programs. So it is really essential that assessments assess what is relevant to the objectives of the instruction and of the institution. And it is important to have third-party assessments, i.e. external assessments, for some of the assessments. And I'll go into the difference between the two types of fundamental two types of assessments. So ISO 21001-812 describes the elements of assessment here: plan, design, develop, programs and assessments that address learning outcomes, ensures appropriate, accessible teaching methods and learning, defining criteria for learning assessment, and conducting learning assessment. So these are just really fundamental elements in a program that an assessment can support. The curriculum design. So the learning outcomes themselves that the assessment is going to measure need to be consistent with the scope or course of the program described in terms of competencies learners should acquire, include an indication of the level to which the competencies will be achieved, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And all those elements are critical in order to be able to have a successful assessment program. So I'm going to talk primarily here now about summative assessments, which are the type of assessments that we have delivered here at our company. So in our field of language testing, the goal of the standards that the field has, the standards are to develop the skill of actually using the language in speaking and writing, and to be able to interpret listening and reading in real world context. So the focus of the standards in our country and around the world are to actually be able to assess what you can do with the language in real terms. But when we launched our online test called the STAMP test in 2002, virtually all programs in the United States were focused on the rote memorization of grammar, vocabulary, and rules. And that's not what the standard called for. Part of the reason that that type of teaching and learning was being conducted is that there was not technology available that would allow for the large scale, affordable assessment of those real world skills. Interviewing each student for their speaking skills or finding real world reading and listening passages that you could test was just impractical. So technology stepped in the form of the internet in the 90s and allowed that kind of large scale, affordable assessment to move forward. And that third party assessment, so some external credible entity assessing progress, is critical in driving instruction methods to align with the goals and objectives of a program. And I think we've seen over the past 20 years that the tests that we and others have developed that focus on that measuring real world language skills have made a huge difference in the way language is taught and learned. So that it focuses on what you can really do with a language instead of what grammar rules you can memorize and regurgitate. So 21,001 makes clear the distinctions about the types of assessment and the important roles that each of them plays. I've been primarily speaking so far about summative assessment, which is given at the end of a course of study to summarize the learning that's taken place. Summative assessment can be effective in providing data to show the success of an individual and a program in reaching goals, if the test is aligned to the standards and goals and learning outcomes that the program has identified. 21,001 makes this clear in 8.3.4.4, the link between test design and learning outcomes. So I want to talk just a little bit about the other fundamental type of assessment that we focus on, and that's formative assessment. Yale University here in the state has a definition that I like of formative assessment. Formative assessment refers to tools that identify misconceptions, struggles, and learning gaps along the way and assess how to close those gaps. These are low to no stakes tests. In other words, there's no connection to a grade or a certification. And they're designed to help students take ownership of their learning. They should give immediate, specific, and actionable feedback to learners. Usually these have been teacher developed, delivered, scored, and reported. These results should lead to successful student outcomes that are then demonstrated and confirmed in the third-party summative assessment at the end of the course of learning. Formative assessments can be a very powerful method of improving learning. Research shows that immediate, concrete, and actionable feedback is the most powerful method for improving learning outcomes. And that element of immediacy is quite critical and quite challenging. Up until today, there have been practical limitations on the effectiveness of formative assessments. Teachers are busy. They have too many students to give immediate feedback to. Yet research shows that immediate feedback is critical in ensuring that learning is taking place. If there's a gap between the experience of doing something and getting feedback, the learning is much less effective.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, have you
Yes.
moved on to the next slide? We can still see summative assessment on the screen.
Thank you. My apologies.
Thank
Yes,
you.
so here's the slide on the summative assessment. And here's the slide for formative assessment. So today we have new technologies that can enable the delivery of immediate, specific, and actionable feedback. Much like the internet in the 90s enabled large-scale, affordable summative language assessment, today, artificial intelligence is beginning to emerge that will enable the delivery of large-scale, immediate, specific, and actionable feedback for learners. And we at Avant are developing a tool to do that. So in conclusion, assessment is essential to assure that effective learning is taking place that is aligned to the goals or standards of a program. Assessment generates learning. Summative measures how effectively learning has taken place and whether that learning is aligned with the learning goals. Technology is now enabling us to do both effectively. Both NAAC and ISO 21001 recognize the importance of both types of assessments. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you so much, sir. So that was a lot about assessments, very heavy terms being used, and yes, how the use of AI can, influence the entire, I would say, the world of assessments. So I request participants if there are any quick questions that they want to ask. Anybody has written it in the chat box? We can just check. What are the
What are the impediments in bringing quality assessment?
Yes, sir.
So, and let me speak to the field that I work in terms of language. So summative assessments require a lot of what we call field testing, which is the action of actually administering the test and gathering the psychometric or the statistical data about the questions, whether they're accurate, whether they're at the appropriate level, whether the scoring of the writing and speaking responses, the productive elements, are consistently scored and accurately scored, so that statistical psychometric analysis is critical and not easy to do. So that on the summative assessment side, that's the challenge. And then having experts, of course, who are qualified at building these kinds of tests are very important as well. The aligning with the academics, there are, for language, it's fairly straightforward in terms of the alignment with the standards that are out there. There are two fundamental types of language standards. There's the American standard, which is called the ACTFL standard. And then globally, outside the United States, the CEFR standard, the Common European Framework of Reference, is used. And there are defined levels with descriptors that very clearly define the language that is required that a learner can produce, or the levels of reading and listening that they're able to accurately interpret at each level. The question of how you align that with a curriculum is it's a great question. And I think this is where the assessment is very instructive in making sure that there is alignment. So the assessment should get feedback, which identifies whether learners are actually progressing along the standards that are defined. If they're not, then there's a need to go back and look at the curriculum and see if it's actually teaching what needs to be taught, so that the learning outcomes are aligned with the assessment, are aligned with the objectives. Let's see. So individual lesson plans, again, feed into the progress towards reaching those standards. Share the attendance. Like human creativity when AI is controlling many things. So that's a very long and very deep question. The tools that we're building allow an individual learner to go in and have a conversation with an AI coach, and the coach will give them the opportunity to either have a conversation and then give feedback on the fly so that you can actually get that real-time formative feedback, which helps individuals be more creative. So to that extent, in that limited context, AI isn't really in control. The learner is in control. The AI supports the learner. But certainly those deeper questions about AI controlling so many things are very real and very important to consider. But in this limited context, the AI can be very powerful in giving that formative feedback that is just not physically possible for teachers to do. So I think those were the questions that were raised. Were there any others?
So there's one more question that we got during the registration process, and that is, how does language learning help in improving quality of education? How does language learning improve quality of education? Overall, I mean the overall quality.
Right. So I think simplistically, there's two types of language learning. One is in the language of instruction, which is not, which is essential. If you're not effective in the language of instruction, then you're not able to do work effectively and in all the subjects, in the sciences or math or history, the social studies. In a second language, our belief is that learning a second language provides insights into many many things that you're just not able to understand if you don't speak a second language. But in your country, everybody speaks at least two languages and usually more. In our country, we're very limited, and most people only speak one language, which is a very sad state of affairs. I'm a Japanese speaker. When I went and lived in Japan for 10 years, learning Japanese really changed my outlook on the entire world and made me a much more, I think, creative, hopefully insightful individual, and allowed me to learn things that I just was blind to before. So I'm not sure if that answers the question exactly, but that's what I would have to say on that question.
Thank you so much, sir.
How do you determine what level of proficiency is essential for the medium of instruction? So this is, as I understand the question, if you're teaching a second language, you need to make sure that you're speaking and providing instruction at a level that is just above what the learners are at. So the Vygotsky zone of proximal learning, you're just a little bit above what the students are actually able to do, but not too much, not too little. You don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to bore them. So being, again, able to have regular formative assessment to understand what level the students are at will allow you to be a more effective teacher. The assessments that we deliver are all what's called computer adaptive. So in the writing and the listening portions that are all multiple choice computerized tests, the level adjusts to that of the student. So if a student is a very accomplished one, the questions will become very difficult. If they're struggling, then the assessment gets easier and they're able to answer questions that are easier. And that has two important effects. One is that the student is engaged because they're not overwhelmed or bored. They're getting questions that are challenging. The other is that all the time you're asking questions close to the student's level, you're able to gather data that really is able to discriminate on their actual level. If you're asking something really easy, you're not going to learn anything about what the level of that student. If you're asking something that's way beyond what they're capable of doing, similarly, you're not learning anything about really what they're capable of. If you're asking questions that are very close to their level, you're constantly gathering data that will give you a very accurate measure of their actual level, proficiency level.
Thank you, sir. So thank you, Mr. Bong, for the very informative and enlightening presentation, as well as very patiently responding to all the queries and questions raised by our participants. Now we move on to our second speaker of the session, Dr. Mary Louise Stoll-Stephen. Dr. Mary Louise is a lead auditor and consultant for management standards. Since 2014, she has been managing Life School GmbH, a consulting company for educational institutions and the development of integrated management systems in operational practice. She is a member of various committees that work towards providing quality management of educational organizations. With her wide-ranging expertise as an engineer and scientist, she has extensive experience in strategic higher education planning in the German state of Hesse. As Deputy Managing Director of the Frankfurt Chamber of Industry and Commerce, she was responsible for vocational training and continuing education. Until 2013, she founded and managed two international educational organizations in Frankfurt, Germany, and Lausanne, Switzerland. Dr. Mary Louise has to her credit many publications related to quality management systems in education. I welcome her to take over the stage. Thank you.
Here we are. Can you hear me now? Hi. Yeah, I'm Marie-Louise Stoll-Stephan, and thank you so much for this very nice introduction. It's an honor to be here at this great conference, and I really feel honored to be here. I must give you some apologies. I had a surgery at the eye, and so I look a bit strange maybe to you. But I will switch off my camera during the presentation and switch it on again during the discussion, if you don't mind. I am going to share my screen. Hope you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes, yes, we can see.
All right. Fine.
If you want, you can keep your camera off. Otherwise, you really look nice.
Okay. All right. So if you don't mind, for me, it's fine. Please look at the presentation. So,
yeah, that's better.
So my topic is about why ISO 21001 certification may become more important in times of rapid technological change and AI. So it's a question, yeah? It's not a yes or no, it's a question. And this is, I would like to shed some light upon in this presentation. If it works, let me see. Yes. Okay. So the 2101 does has the integrated management system EOMS, and this helps to encounter the technological developments and their effects, in my opinion. But it's an open question, so we may ask, what can AI achieve in terms of improving quality of management at all, and of course at educational organizations, and where are possible risks and challenges? As we all know, the topic of AI seems to be omnipresent right now. Since half a year, we got ChatGPT and others. So we may ask, is it a blessing or is it more a curse? And in the Forum Economic, the World Economic Forum at Davos this year was addressing this topic as one of the main topics. So they say education meets AI, so artificial intelligence as a driving force for economy and society. And one of the conclusions had been AI is changing education and professional requirements to an extent that is not defined by the age of the learners and the physical space. Let's see whether that's true. So more than ever, the education providers need to prepare themselves for the corresponding challenges. Educational programs have to be strategically planned in even shorter cycles in order to keep up with innovative developments. So AI isn't a game changer for education providers only, but for all organizations. It changes work methods and learning experiences through early identification of quality issues. Now, I first look at the positive ones. Data-driven predictive analytics to spot failures and non-conformities. Better resource allocation by using AI models. Proactive approach towards risk management and planning for risk mitigation efforts. Time savings on audits and inspections, and predictive analytics in various scenarios, such as human resources management, for example. So AI can make quality management a leaner process in all kinds of business sectors. We need, maybe AI can have an inbuilt proof of compliance of the management system. Shorter project cycles, transparency of data, maybe, it's more a question mark. Proactive problem solving, smarter investigation, this is the hope, and intelligent analytics and proposals of good measures. Reusable templates, and maybe we can ease up our documentation. So do these points also apply in the education sector? The potential of the AI methods and approaches in the education sector is enticing and promising. But what are potential risks that arise? As the new technologies have an impact on society as a whole and can affect fundamental values, an ethical debate is essential, as is the creation of trust in the technology, which we don't have right now, I would state. But I would like to hear your opinion of that too. So I have chosen a case study for an educational organization, the university, because the university plays a dual role here, or maybe a triple role. On the one hand, universities train students in the responsible implementation of AI, which is very fine and very helpful and very good. On the other hand, the universities are increasingly becoming the field of application for AI implications themselves in administration and so on. It requires a competent, transparent, and ethical approach of these applications. So AI have the potential to change study programs, have a big influence on research, and administrative work at universities in many ways. I just want to mention one example here from Germany. Last summer, the president of the renowned University of Jena, it's a famous university of the great poets Goethe and Schiller in Eastern Germany, he was alerted when it turned out that AI is capable of completing final examinations as a total. The university feared that classic examination formats such as term papers could become obsolete. However, it seems to have become very difficult to recognize AI or ChatGPT text as a part of a text at all. So the question is, shall we ban ChatGPT and so other AI from our studies? This leaves us with numerous unanswered questions and challenges. So let's have a closer look to the impact of AI on studying. Maybe this technology is fundamentally changing the way we learn and teach. First, the positive aspects. There are a lot of positive aspects. Students may benefit from improved learning experience, and learning can be personalized. Maybe students may can learn at their own pace, have AI-driven tutors, which is very fine for barrier-free access to universities for students, for example, with special requirements. Efficient data analysis is possible, major advantage through efficient and quick checks. Exam results and learning progress can be analyzed easily and quick. And the optimization of curricula by identifying trends and patterns in the data. This allows personalized learning paths to be created. And there is more. The automatization of tasks. Repetitive tasks can be automated in studies. Tests are automatically graded. Essays are checked for plagiarism. I don't know whether I spell it or pronounce it correctly. Plagiarism, I hope so. Homework is corrected by AI. Very nice. So the consequence, more time for individual support and direct dialogue with students. So this is what we heard this morning, that teachers have an important role model, and now they may have more time to go and talk directly to the students and spend some more time with them individually. Very nice effect. And there is more. There is, for example, virtual and augmented reality. This opens up completely new possibilities for studying, using virtual reality to explore complex concepts or gain practical experience. There's more. I do not want to go into this in detail. Just look at point 5. The hopes of improving students' individual learning will also reduce dropout rates, which is also very important. But there are, of course, not only positive effects. Challenges are here. What kind of challenges can arise? One really big concern, at least here in Germany, and I know in Europe, is academic misconduct, violation of the principles of scientific integrity. This is really a big and a major topic in many academic debates over here. There's great concern that texts generated by AI tools will be misused as intellectual property without appropriate transparent labeling. Regarding examinations, such an offense is regarded as an attempt to deceive. Transparency is of the utmost importance and a requirement of academic honesty. And last not least, the principles of good scientific practice in research are non-negotiable and must continue to apply in the future. This is what all the universities over here in the debates stress upon. This is non-negotiable. So there's another point I would like to have a look. Maybe we are facing a two-class society in education. Those with the access to costly premium generative tools like ChatGPT 4.0, 5.0, and so on, and those without. Maybe. So what are the consequences for teaching and studies? And what we may ask ourselves is, how can these risks and opportunities be systematically recorded and tracked? It's the stress and the emphasis is here on systematically, because there's so many things we have to think about, but how can it be done in a proper and guided way? It becomes urgent to establish binding rules. In order to integrate AI to education and guarantee its core principle and value, it's necessary to develop skills to avoid preconception and misconception, support diversity, protect privacy, develop transparent data policies, integrate regular ethical data impact, and treat personal data as a fundamental global right. So the trial use of AI tools in studying and teaching must be definitely accompanied by comprehensive reflection on the didactic, legal, ethical, and social dimensions. So the question is, can ISO 21001 be the adequate tool to guide us here? Let's see. What is required to get a 360 degrees reflection on the AI impact? What can we do? Activities and measures can be to create collaboration and trust. We have to strive for consensus between all interested parties and reach out to the community. Ongoing evaluation, of course. We need feedback from learners, from educators, from researchers, from administrators and other interested parties. Human oversight over AI. So the involvement of researchers, educators, and students is crucial in design and development of research, of studies, of curricula, of syllabi. Bias awareness. Bias should not also only be detected by AI. No, we have to have a human oversight to evaluate risk and chances and taking actions for mitigation. Awareness is crucial for data security and privacy in order to have transparency and disclosure. And of course, as I already mentioned, academic integrity. This needs to be in line with the mission, vision, and the goals of the institution. So ISO 21 provides clear routes of action that offer a guideline for exploring the opportunities and risks. Already in 2019, the OECD stated that the ethical approach to AI is crucial for the integration of AI into our lives. So if we look to the 21, we see the EOMS with its 11 principles, and 2 of these principles are really very important here: ethical behavior and action, and consideration of social implications. It's only an example. I will show you some other clauses of 21 that addresses those very important points. But the 11 principles are non-negotiable. And these 2 apply to all processes in an organization, not only to 1 or 2. So it must be ensured that the systems do not introduce injustices, do not have a discriminatory effect, or jeopardize the data sovereignty of users. And if you look to some clauses here, just an example in clause 8.5, strengthening of the data sovereignty through transparency and openness is a requirement. So AI competences may have particular added value if full transparency is taken into account in every area of work. Crucial 21, if you take 21 as a guideline, is, we heard this morning, leadership. Leadership includes also involvement of learners and other beneficiaries in the relevant processes, and AI is one. So if you look, for example, to clause 5.2, the management level, so the leaders, must take the needs and expectations of interested parties into account in its strategic considerations and statute. Fine. And 7.4 also points out that the internal and external communication must seek and promote cooperation and coordination of activities with relevant interested parties. So we need that dialogue. We need that dialogue with everybody, and we need collaboration and cooperation. Also 8.3, really crucial in universities regarding research and planning for curricula and syllabi. The planning of curricula and syllabi development need the involvement of learners and, of course, educators in the development process. And here, again, the 11 principles of the EOMS are the basis. And last not least, Annex D also gives you a lot of very helpful hints and ideas how to participate in this process. And as you may know, the annexes are not compulsory except to Annex A regarding kindergarten, but everything in the annexes is really, really helpful to guide you through the process of dealing with risks and chances. So in short, the requirements of 21.001 apply one-to-one to the challenging of dealing with AI. For example, planning for risks and chances, collaboration of relevant interested parties, transparency of tools and development of curricula and syllabi, reflection, evaluation, and continuous improvement, building a relationship of trust between students, educators, and administration, data and people security, and last not least, the management, the top management has to be responsible, has to take this role of full responsibility of everything that I mentioned. Of course, there is more, and if you go for the 21, then you may follow this wheel here with the 10 main requirements of ISO 21001. I'm not going to go into this, but you may see it when you get the presentations. It may be helpful. It's not a big deal. You are really guided. And I think it's a really, really good guideline to go along. Of course, there's still room for improvement of this standard. We are not at the end, as you may know, or Arti pointed out already. We're going to meet in our ISO technical committee next month, and we will talk about the further development of the standard. But right now, already the requirements apply one-to-one to these challenges. And you may also know or already recognize that there are competitive advantages through the certification via ISO 21001. in times of serious upheaval in dealing with technology challenge in all educational sectors, the certification is a differentiating element. The certification signals a readiness for strategic education management, and the educational institution ensures its long-term positioning in the market and gets a high reputation. An ISO 2101 certificate is a signpost to excellence in education. And what I like best is it really all the time puts people first, not technology. Just an outlook to our ISO activities now. There are new work group discussions coming, and there was a survey among all the nations that are members of ISO TC 232, our committee at ISO. And we were asked, what are the main important topics for our next discussions about the further development of that standard? And this is the result illuminated. You see, it's AI. It's AI, but not alone. It's AI in combination with ethics, with the learners in the middle of everything, with education, digital education, and teachers. So everybody here is really has to be committed in this new era of digital learning and researching. So I hope we get further discussions on this, because this is still a very open field with a lot of questions. So for the time being, I thank you very much for your attention. And maybe you have some questions. Thanks a lot. Shall I take back my presentation?
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
You're still there?
You could stop sharing your presentation. That's fine. There is a question for you, which we are just going to ask.
So,
You're right.
Professor Mary, there's a question for you from Professor Jayanti, and she's asking, do you think artificial intelligence has a limitation? For me, artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence, and NI, which is, I think, is a natural intelligence, is NI. What about human emotion, and what extent it will remain the quality in education?
Yeah, exactly. We don't know yet exactly what all the impact will be, because we are still at the beginning with these discussions. And here in Germany, all the universities are a bit, in the middle of the debate there and in Europe. And I think it's everywhere the same. We do not really know how to deal with it and how we can ensure that our human approach, our emotions, our being human is in the foreground all the time, that we are the ones who go through the educational process. And the AI can only be a tool. We have to have that in mind. It's not a new and it will not replace anything. We have to see that right now it's a tool, but on the other hand, we do not have transparency on that tool. We don't know how ChatGPT is generating all the text or pictures, and so there is a black box for us right now. And this is a risk, a big challenge. So nobody can tell you exactly where these, what kind of resources we got for ChatGPT or others. We know that AI is used in business or in every business in the machine world for a long time already. But we now are facing a new tool where we cannot see where the resources come from. And this kind of black box is not nice to have right now. We do not really know how to deal with that. Maybe you have an idea.
May I jump into this, Professor Mary Louise? I want to respond also to this question, because this question seems to come up quite often. This question came up 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when computers entered the scene. This question has been constantly coming up, and I'm afraid that I say this. I'm not saying this with a great deal of happiness, but I have to state that I think it's a dated question. ChatGPT is here to stay. AI is here to stay, just as ICT was here to stay. And if we're
Yes.
going to spend so much of time in theorizing or intellectually debating on, is it a good thing? What is going to happen to teachers? Are they going to replacing? No, they're not going to replace teachers. I think we have to stop getting frightened of being replaced. That is the first thing that we have to do. The second thing that we have to do is that we have to outdo our students. We can't allow our students to take over from us, because students are not going to wait for us while we resolve our intellectual conflicts. Students are going to go ahead and they're going to use artificial intelligence. So if we don't get on the top of it all, if we don't actually precede them in our knowledge, our usage, our ethical usage, and I love the way that you spoke about the importance of ethical usage. And this is where, the person who asked the question and anybody else who has the question, the difference is that as human beings, we have the choice to ethically use something or to not ethically use it. And we cannot, the AI will not do that. The AI may not have a heightened sense of spiritual and ethical consciousness. As human beings, we have that. And that is what differentiates us from AI. So I think we've got to go ahead. We have to take the bull by the horns. We've got to accept the fact that ICT in its advanced form AI is here to stay, and we have to address it. We have to be better than AI, and we can be. And that is where NI will also play a big role. But AI is here to stay. There's no point pretending that it doesn't exist, and let's not treat it like a bogey either. That is my way of answering this question. And thank you so much for what I thought was a very brave presentation. I would never be able to present on AI and its advantages in an Indian classroom at all right now. I would be quite hesitant.
Well, I was a bit hesitant myself, but it was my proposal. I proposed some ideas what I can talk about, and Artie has chosen this one, or you, and I was not happy in the first step to talk about this topic. But on the other hand, I said to myself, yes, we have to address it. We have to go for this. And as I see it in all the universities, what kind of debate is since half a year they're debating and debating, and as you say, it will not vanish. It will be there, and we have to take these challenges, and we can do if we take the right approaches regarding ethical approaches and ethical look, and also get people involved. Not do it separately, have students involved, have educators involved, have research addressed, and not separately done. It's all linked.
And I think, Mary Louise, you presented it very well. The way you integrated AI with the requirements of ISO 21001, I think that was a very needed step. Very nice. Thank you so much for this. And you have very rightly pointed out the fact that it's not about whether we should use AI or we shouldn't. It is all about how much should be used.
Yes.
And do we know how best we can put it to use? So ISO 21001 wants the institutions to remain relevant, and so does AI. We as
Thank you so much.
teachers need to be updated. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a beautiful presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Mary, for a enlightening and engaging, insightful talk where you unravel the relationship between AI and the accreditation and the emerging education landscape. Now I invite Dr. Hassan Nandu, who's a accreditation consultant at Al Marifa University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Dr. Hassan.
Thank you. Let me try to share my slide with you.
You are the co-host, Dr. Hassan. So you can
Yeah.
share your screen without your PPT.
Okay, can you hear me there?
No.
Hello?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. How about now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but
We can hear
Okay.
you. We can hear
Can you
you.
see my slides?
No, we can't
Uh,
see the slides. It's a black screen for us.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. All right, let me try to. Can anybody help me there? Because I have some problem here.
You are a co-host, so you actually have the ability to share your screen.
That's what I try to do. Okay, I will try again to go back. All right.
Dr. Hassan, are
Yes.
you going to use the same PPT that Dr. Jamal Shamida was using?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the one.
I have that. I have that. Just give me
Okay,
one
okay.
thing.
All right. Thank you.
And Dr. Hassan, we would also like to thank you because last minute you've been able to spare time and join us. Dr. Jamal Smitha was supposed to join us and make a presentation on the accreditation. He is from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, from the Al Marifa University in Riyadh. And they have already implemented ISO 21001. They've been certified and they've completed 1 full year. And recently they've undergone the surveillance audit also. And they've been doing it very effectively. So Dr. Smitha had to make a presentation on that, but due to some medical emergency, he couldn't come. But so nice of him that he sent Dr. Hassan. So very warm welcome to you, Dr. Hassan. Over to you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for this wonderful presentation. And like I said, today I'm here to step in for Dr. Jamal, who has been gone to the hospital. But I work with Dr. Jamal very well, and we understand each other very well. He's really my boss. So in our introductory part, we are looking at the ISO 21001 as provide us with the management framework. And what we want to do here is to share our experience at American University with the ISO 21001 until we get accredited. So we went through step by step. And from those steps, we said standards provides management framework for education organization to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve their management system for the educational services. This is one of our beliefs. Also, standard focus, okay, on the specific needs and expectations of learners as well as other relevant stakeholders. For that reason that we are going to explore the internal and external advantages of ISO 21001 in the context of university ratings and rankings, which would involve understanding how implementation of this standard could positively impact educational situation. Okay. Now, sorry, I have some problem here. Let me start with the what you call enhanced management system. In our experience, we believe or not believe, we practice ISO 21 to provide a systematic and well-defined approach to managing educational process. This is our belief. So this leads to improved efficiency, effectiveness, and overall performance of the university. So I present this diagram here. It shows us where we start. We usually start in the classroom. From the classroom, we go right to the program. From the program, we go to the college, and then we go to institutional wide. This is what we usually practiced. Therefore, okay. From there, I will put our focus on learner-centered approach. That's our main focus. The standard places a strong emphasis on meeting the needs and expectation of the learners. We believe this very strongly. So implementing ISO 21001 results in a more learner-centered environment, fostering a positive and educational experience. In this case, we said we do what we call continuous improvement. And under continuous improvement, the ISO 20001 encourages culture of continuous improvement. That means it should be a norm for us under any circumstances to improve what we are doing. So the university regularly assess and refine all processes leading to ongoing enhancement in the quality of education provided. And we use this classroom plan. We plan, sorry, are we gonna go back? Yeah, we plan, we do, we check, and we act. This is our principle. So whatever process we do in the ISO 21001, this is the basic. If wherever we find any default, so we do continuous improvement based on this plan. All right. Now, we are saying this ISO standard has increased stakeholders' confidence. Most our stakeholders, they become very impressed with what we have been doing. So by conforming to an internationally recognized standard, universities demonstrate its commitment to delivering high quality education. And that is the motto of every institution. So this boosts confidence among stakeholders, including students themselves, their parents, faculty, and accrediting bodies. So in all of this, there are risks that we have to take. We can't manage educational institution without taking a risk. So ISO 20001 includes a risk-based approach by what? Helping educational institution identify potential risks and opportunities. This we are talking about competition here. So this proactive risk management contributes to long-term sustainability and success with the university. Unless we become competitive, it's going to be very difficult for us to achieve what we want to achieve. So we focus on competitiveness. In this case, we recognize so in this case, we want to talk to present something on external advantages and internal advantages. That's what we want to try to do. What is going on here? Sorry. No. We're going to go too further. Go back. Back again. Go back one more. One more. Yes. This is we're going to talk about external advantages and internal advantages. In implying this ISO standard, we focus on this. What are the external advantages we have? First, we say global recognition. This is one external advantage. ISO 20001 is an internationally recognized standard. So universities that achieve certification demonstrate their commitment to quality education on a global scale, potentially enhancing their reputation and recognition. That's why we believe ISO 20020 standard are very important for market competition. And also, like we said, it is recognized worldwide. And not only that, parents, students, and stakeholders, they are looking at it as one of their indicator to show how the institution is performing. All right. Now, based on that, we have what we call student recruitment campaign of the year. We established that to make students understand exactly what we are doing. So we at Al Marifa, in an increasingly competitive landscape, ISO 20001 certification set university apart. So it may be a factor considered by prospective students, parents, and employers when choosing or evaluating an educational institution. So parents, they want to know whether you are satisfied or not satisfied, what is ranked in the university. So we had to get into student recruitment campaign to make them understand what is all about our university. So based on that, we aligned the ISO standard with our accreditation. And so ISO 20001 complemented the existing accreditation process and standard. Many accreditation bodies recognize and value ISO certification, contributing to a more streamlined and comprehensive evaluation process. Like you say, this is the certificate which you are awarded a year ago, and after going through a lot of process, like I said earlier. All right. Now, to do that, we had to improve ratings and ranking. So implementing ISO 20001 positively influenced the university rating and rankings. And most of the ranking system take into account factors such as quality of education. This is number one. Student satisfaction and institutional management. Overall, all areas must be addressed by this standard. And that's what we did to get this certification. Now we are positioning ourselves in a better way rather than when we used before, maybe 5 years ago. Okay. Now, they said we are not alone in this process. We have to collaborate. So our university enhance collaboration opportunities. So ISO 20001 emphasizes collaboration with the relevant stakeholders, and that's what we did. This picture is showing us how we cooperate with other institutions. Universities that adhere to this standard may find it easier to establish partnership, collaboration, and exchange program with other institutions, further enriching the educational experience. So in all of us, we believe in that. So now we at El Marif University, we implemented the ISO 20001, okay? And what we did, oh, sorry. What we did, we took these steps of implementation at Al Marif University. So we went from the left to the right, coming down bottom, go back to the left, and then ended up to the, that means we started with planning. After planning, we went into we formed different committees, okay? We scrutinized training program, we conducted workshop, okay, and gap analysis, and working as a team. That was part of orientation. We call it orientation. From there, we moved down to what we call implementation. Implementation, we had to approve, review, what we call process flow charts and process mapping and documentation. This was the main issue that we had to consider. From there, we went to audit and then improvement. From the audit, there was internal audit, management review, corrections, and external audit. And then we ended up to the accreditation. This is how we operated until we get satisfied and accredited. All right. Now, what are the project achievements? First of all, we did 49 process and procedures. We conducted 49 processes and procedures. 1,500 inspected documents. They were inspected, 1,500 documents. 335 coded documents were reviewed, and 1,200 automated documents were reviewed, and 70 meetings and workshops were conducted, and 14 internal audit exercises were implemented. Okay, so our project achievement is like what you see there. It is the Al Marifa was awarded this certificate, okay? In 2000, by practicing this, we were awarded this certificate, and now we are proud of it. And now whatever we do in our university, the main issues here we deal with ISO 20001 throughout our process. The teaching, learning, all this is done together with the cooperation with all staff, our students, and everybody involved in the academic institution. So I would like to say thank you for listening. Thank you. If there are any questions, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan, for such a wonderful presentation and also coming on a very short notice for attending this conference. Now I request Dr. Professor Nagpal, who is also IQSC convener, to give a vote of thanks for this very wonderful one-day conference on accreditation.
Right. So thank you so much, Mr. Hassan. Thank you very much. But I
Thank
think
you.
it's been a long day, and I think people have already. We had a roundtable discussion actually, and I think people asked a lot of questions then. So as of now, because yours was more of a case study, so it was very clear that you have successfully implemented it, and we congratulate you. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
As we reach the end of, I think, what has been an extremely fruitful conference on accreditation processes, both SNAC and ISO. I think it shows the way ahead. As Professor Pal just mentioned, that during the roundtable, some very interesting questions came up, and there was a lot of concern about whether these processes are similar or not. And I think it was made quite clear that, certain kind of mapping, there is data that is common to these processes. And we take away some very important pointers about the process of NAC implementation and how to do that. And at the same time, how to conduct ISO and what ISO really speaking means. I think the topics covered range from, ISO itself, about how we need to be careful about the kind of accreditation we are going in for. That I thought was extremely important to the present moment, where we actually had a session on artificial intelligence and accreditation processes. So be it chat GPT and be it anything else that's coming to us by way of technology in the 21st century, it's important for us to integrate this in our academic ecosystem at the level of higher education. So at the end of this international conference, I would like to thank our speakers for the day, Professor A.K. Singh, Professor Sitaram Soni, Mr. David Pong, Mr. Anil Jauhari, Dr. Marie-Louise Stoll-Stefan, Dr. Jamel Smida, who couldn't join us, and Dr. Hassan Nando for joining us at such short notice. Thank you so much for taking out time to share your views on accreditation processes with participants from different colleges of the University of Delhi and our national and international audience. We would also, on behalf of Janki Devi Memorial College, I would also like to thank the participants from different colleges and so many of them who are with us, in the online session at this moment and are also physically present with us in Janki Devi. Our partners from the Andamans, Hyderabad, Oriental University, Uzbekistan, and other universities of Uzbekistan that are our partner universities. It's very important at this moment for us to thank our patrons, Dr. Aarti Khosla from COAE, for this entire endeavor. I think our understanding of ISO processes, and Dr. Khosla is a very strict auditor. So, we've also undergone training as internal auditors. And so this entire process of accreditation, I think, through ISO is something that, we have learned a lot about from her. At this moment, I would also like to thank the principal of the college, Professor Swati Pal, who's worked very hard in all these years to ensure that, we set these accreditation processes not just for the heck of it, but we truly believe in these accreditation processes. So I think in her own address, where she continually stressed on the importance of a kind of genuine data collection, I think that really kind of spelt it out for us, because this genuine data collection is possible only through her sincere endeavors. So thanks go out to you, Professor Pal, for this. I would also like to thank the IQAC mentor and the systems coordinator, Dr. Shilpa Chaudhary. She's not just the systems coordinator of ISO, but is also the IQAC mentor and has worked tirelessly to set these processes in place. Professor Ruby Bhardwaj, who's also the ISO systems coordinator. The organizing team that has worked behind the scenes tirelessly, Dr. Renuka, Ms. Jyoti, Dr. Dinesh Kataria, Dr. Madhulika Nirmal, Dr. Bijoyata Yonzon, and Ms. Sonia. Thank you so much for all the efforts that you have put in. Our tech team, Mr. Surinder Kumar, Mr. Manoj Sharma. The students team, I think the students have worked very hard to ensure that the smallest things are taken care of. So a big thank you to our entire students team, the canteen committee that has worked from morning till this point to ensure that everybody feels comfortable, and their contribution, I think, goes beyond just kind of planning everything in terms of refreshments for this particular conference. And once again, thank you, participants, for continuing to be with us till this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nagpal. I would like to take this opportunity to also record our thanks to you and your team, your support, your encouragement, and your participation in not just the conference, but also in the process of ISO certification. You have a few months ago taken on as IQAC coordinator. You have set new benchmarks for us, and it is under her IQAC coordinatorship that we have actually moved on to a global platform now. So heartiest congratulations to you as well for a very successful conference. And of course, Shilpa and Ruby, great job done. Thank you so much, participants. Thank you.